Welcome to this explainer for the Growth Academy Leading Others program. If you're a manager or team leader joining us from anywhere across the Asia-Pacific region, whether that's Japan, Australia, Vietnam, India, Thailand, or Korea, you are in the exact right place. We're going to give you a super practical, Monday-ready overview of situational leadership, so you are totally prepped for Seminar 2.1. We're starting right from zero, so let's just jump right in. You know, as a manager, you're juggling a million different challenges every single day. And in the middle of all that chaos, you might actually be wondering, what's the single best leadership style for my team? Like, is there a magic formula? Just one definitive way to manage that works across the board for everyone? Well, spoiler alert, there isn't one. The reality is, your job isn't to rely on one rigid, static style. Actually, the most inconsistent thing you can do as a leader is treat everybody exactly the same. Instead, your job is to read each team member's readiness and just, adjust your approach. The right style depends entirely on the person and the specific task they are tackling at that exact moment. So let's dive into this idea of readiness. I want you to think of every person on your team as a balance on a scale of two things. On one side, you've got their competence. That's their actual skills, their knowledge, and their experience with the work. And on the other side is their commitment, which really just means their internal motivation and their competence to get it done. Every single time you hand out a task, you've got to weigh these two sides. To balance out those scales and meet your team numbers where they are, you essentially have two core leadership behaviors in your toolkit. Think of these as the engine of this whole model. First, there's directive behavior. This is giving clear directions, telling them exactly what, how, and when to do something with close follow-up. And then there's supportive behavior, which is all about building relationships, listening, encouraging, praising, and involving them in decisions. Literally, every management style out there is just a different mix of these two things. All right, let's see how this actually plays out in the real world using 4 levels of readiness, which we're going to represent as 4 birds. Meet our first level, the hatchling. The hatchling is your enthusiastic beginner. They have low competence because, well, they don't have the skills yet, but their motivation is sky high. They are brand new, super eager to please, but completely inexperienced in this specific area. Because they are so new to the task, your hatchling needs a directing or telling leadership style. That means high directive, low supportive behavior. Look, they don't need you to brainstorm with them. They need to know exactly what to do. Clear goals, strict time limits, and a concrete action plan. They also need very frequent feedback, like every 1 or 2 days, just to make sure they're on track, along with a big high five for that awesome enthusiasm. Without that clear structure, a new hatchling is just going to panic. But watch out, because here is the classic mistake managers make here. It is so easy to look at all that massive enthusiasm, assume they naturally know what they're doing, and just leave them alone way too early. If you walk away too soon, that hatchling is going to struggle, make totally avoidable mistakes, and lose all that great motivation. And when that happens, reality sets in. They realize the task is way harder than they thought, they make a few mistakes, and suddenly they morph into the frustrated redbird. This is the disillusioned learner. They've picked up a tiny bit of skill, but their confidence and motivation, total nosedive. They're sitting there thinking, man, I really don't know if I can actually do this. To get this redbird flying again, you've got to shift to a coaching or selling style. Now you're applying high direction and high support. You still need to set clear goals, but now you've got to explain the why behind them to build up their conviction. They need weekly feedback, a ton of deep support when they inevitably mess up, and a safe space to just voice their frustrations. Involve them in solving problems so they don't just throw in the towel completely. The absolute biggest error you can make with a frustrated redbird, pulling away your relationship support right when they're doubting themselves the most. If you just bark orders at a redbird without offering encouragement or listening to their concerns, their motivation is going to completely flatline. No question. Now, if you successfully coach them through that dip, they evolve into our 3rd level, the rooster. The rooster is a capable but cautious performer. They've got good competence now. They genuinely possess the right skills, but their commitment fluctuates. They can be a bit temperamental, maybe hesitating to take full responsibility, or they just lack that final push of intrinsic motivation to totally own the outcome. So, your leadership style has to shift yet again. Now you need a supporting or participating style. You're going to lower your directive behavior, because they already know how to do the job, and keep that supportive behavior high. You want to act more like a sounding board, give them direct access to you, clear away obstacles, talk to them like an equal peer, and actively encourage them to make and own their own decisions. When you're dealing with a rooster, you have to step back from the micro details. If you keep telling a rooster exactly how to do a job they already know perfectly well how to do, they're going to read that as a total lack of trust. And honestly, nothing kills a capable person's motivation faster than feeling like their boss doesn't trust them to do their job. Which brilliantly brings us to our final stage. If you've supported that rooster correctly, they eventually become the owl. This is your self-reliant expert. Extremely high competence, exceptionally high motivation. They are completely independent. Basically, they've got a giant glowing "do not disturb" sign on their desk. They know what to do, they want to do it, and they just deliver. For the owl, you switch to a delegating style. Low direction, low support. You are quite literally getting out of their way so they can work independently. But, and this is absolutely key, autonomy does not mean abandonment. They still need a leader, but more as an advisor or a colleague. Give them variety, new challenges to keep them sharp, full ownership of their work, and your deep, unwavering trust. The absolute worst thing you can do to an owl is step in and try to micromanage them. It will drive them crazy. But on the flip side, don't make the mistake of completely ignoring them either. Delegating doesn't mean you stop caring. You still need to monitor their progress from afar, and please, remember to actually celebrate their wins and recognize their high performance. All right, let's pull this all together into the single most important principle of this entire framework. Please hear this clearly. Readiness changes over time, and it is entirely dependent on the specific task in front of them, not the person as a whole. You diagnose the task, not the overall human being. As people grow, they move from hatchling to redbird to rooster to owl on a given task, and your leadership style has to travel right along with them. To put that into perspective, let's say you have a senior salesperson on your team named John. John might be a wise, fiercely independent owl when he's handling complex client calls. You completely delegate that to him. But if you ask John to design a training curriculum for new hires for the very first time, well, he isn't an owl anymore. On that specific task, he instantly becomes a hatchling. If you use your delegating style on John for the training task, he is going to fail. Your leadership style absolutely must adapt to match his readiness for that specific new duty. Now, just a quick, incredibly crucial word of caution before we wrap up. Do not confuse a struggling, low readiness learner, like our frustrated redbird, with a genuine destructor. The sources we're looking at are super clear on this. Destructors are chronic blamers. They spread intrigue, they actively undermine others, and they actually take pleasure in seeing their colleagues fail. This situational model, it's meant for developing willing people. Persistent, toxic, destructive behavior is a totally separate management problem that requires a totally different HR approach. So, to apply this right away to your work week and get you ready for the seminar, here is your Monday morning homework. Sit down with a piece of paper and write out the names of your team members. Next to each name, list their separate specific responsibilities. Then, map out exactly which bird they are for every single one of those tasks. You're going to quickly realize your team isn't just one type of bird. They're a whole flock that needs completely different approaches from you all day long. Take a hard look at that list of your team's tasks. Ask yourself, where have you been using the wrong style? Where have you been micromanaging an owl or delegating way too early to a hatchling? Most importantly, what are you going to do differently tomorrow to give them the exact support they need to truly fly? Think about that as you head into Seminar 2.1. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy leading.